everybody. In today's video, I'm doing a Toucan Sam Extreme 3D nail art, and it's got like the one wing that pops up. If you didn't want it to be extreme 3D and a little bit more wearable, you could just sculpt it differently so that the wing wasn't up into the air. I really love this little design. I think it is just so cute, and I decided to do a Toucan Sam because they recently redid the Toucan Sam character for their logo, and the new one is just, I don't know, not really that good. So I want to do the old one as kind of a, now it's a throwback, I suppose. But I hope you guys love it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well. I'm going to begin by creating an ombre of pink into orange. So in that case, I'm actually going to start with the orange at the tip and then brush it up. And if your acrylic sets before you can brush it, just apply a little bit more to start that fade. Kind of fill that whole thing in. As you can see, that beginning fade is actually crucial. I've seen so many videos where people are trying to create an acrylic ombre and they don't have the top of their lower color blended out, and that just doesn't end well. So just make sure that if you are doing an acrylic ombre that you definitely blend that down, and then encapsulate the nail with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure it is nice and super duper strong. And that also, I think it actually helps your blend look a little smoother if it's got a bit of clear on top of it. And then I'm going to file this nail into shape with my e-file to make sure it is nice and smooth and, you know, not too thick and all that good stuff. And now in a nail form backing, I'm going to begin sculpting my Toucan Sam. I'm going to begin with a darker blue hue, not a super dark like a midnight blue or anything, but just not a light blue either. And I'm going to just kind of begin working on his body. So this little Toucan Sam is tiny, and I mean he's so tiny. He's actually one of the smallest full characters I've ever sculpted, so in that respect he was a reasonable challenge for me. Plus he has a lot of different colors and a lot of different shapes happening, so there was a lot to work on with Toucan Sam. But one of his wings, so the wing it's his right wing, but visually when you're looking at it, it's the left side, is not going to be attached to his body. So that wing just sculpt right next to where he is, but not, you know, like I said, not touching. And then his other wing, his left wing, is actually going to be attached to the body. So that when you go to attach him and like assemble him later, he looks a little bit more 3D because the one wing you can bring forward. As you can see, it is also significantly larger than the other wing. So the wing that's not attached should be bigger than the attached wing. That is a lot of words. So now with some white, I'm going to be adding some highlights to his chest. And because it's so thin and so skinny, my white doesn't have quite like that fully opaque look that I'm going for. So I will fix that later with some paint. But for now, it's good to just have sort of a base laid down for that. So I've got that little bit started for the, like I said, so many different colors happening. And then I did add a shadow to his belly with some very diluted black acrylic. So that's going to give you more of that midnight dark blue, just because it's the blue showing through the black. And I'm going to be adding his legs with orange. And I've said this in past videos, orange is just a weird color of colored acrylic to work with. And I know that some of you have had that same experience as me, because I had a lot of people saying, oh my goodness, you have that too. Yeah, orange is weird. And so if you have this like classic pumpkin orange acrylic that you're working with, try to, you know, try to just work with it, but it's always just so strange. So I first started out actually with just his feet. So now with black acrylic again, I'm going to be sculpting his beak. And if you guys are thinking I'm just super spastic and I'm jumping all around this character back and forth, especially if you're new to my channel, you may be thinking that like, what are you doing? But the reason I do that is because I let the acrylic set up from spot to spot before I work on something next to it. So like his beak overlaps his wing quite a bit actually. And so you don't want to necessarily sculpt that beak right on top of the wing right after you finish the wing, because you're going to mess it up. And it's not going to give you very good results whatsoever. So if you give that first piece a little chance just to kind of rest and solidify, even if it isn't 100% cured, as long as it's close where it's not easy to change its shape, then you're fine. So it's nice to just kind of go back and forth from spot to spot and give everything a moment to rest. And so then I've got his beak, and I'm going to work on that. And as you can see, I don't know if you guys could see that kind of shininess go away. That's because this is a new clip. I turned my camera off and I worked on something else, and I came back to this and let the acrylic again, I let it cure for a while. And going back to that pesky orange acrylic, I'm going to be adding the rest of his beak. So like his lower part, I like to think of this part as actually his mouth, and then the black portion of the beak would be his nose, which I know he's a bird and that's not how it works. But that's just, when you're thinking of it and you're personifying him, that's just a kind of a good way to look at it. And then with a lighter shade of blue acrylic, so more of like a brighter sky blue, I added the little head feathers and a little highlight around his eye. And now with some white acrylic, I'm going to be adding those tail feathers. And it's hard to see the tail feathers since they're white against a white nail form backing, just because it's white on white. It's hard to tell what's happening, but you need to add those tail feathers. So just don't forget them, even if you don't see them right now. A little bit more of a highlight to his eye, and actually add his eye with some white acrylic. Same thing before. I'll go through and I'll brighten it later with acrylic paint. And all of these little pieces, if you're not somebody that has really mastered taking tiny bits of acrylic at a time, if your beads always seem to be just really large, maybe this wouldn't be a great design for you to start with for practicing those skills. Or what you could do is you could just sculpt his face and you could make it bigger and make that a little bit easier on you. Because like I said, for myself, this was a huge challenge, and I'm used to sculpting things that are ridiculously small. It's what I challenge myself to do. So for him, he would be something that if you're looking for a challenge, he's a great choice because there's so many little details to work on. And once you're happy with him, then you can glue him to the tip of the nail and then secure underneath with some clear acrylic. All of these little pieces are very thin, and so you really want to fill in underneath him a bit more than you may normally, and make sure that you hit all of the skinny little pieces where they're, like the tail feathers and the legs and under his beak and his wings, so that he's not going to be very fragile. So this is sort of your insurance step, is what I like to think of it as. And now with acrylic paint, we get to add all of the details to Toucan Sam, because you're thinking to yourself, you've had enough details already, but wait, no, there's more. So I'm going to be adding some different bands across his beak, and we're going to just do kind of different stripes. Look at some pictures, and I know that there's the new Toucan Sam and then there's the original Toucan Sam, and you can do either one, whichever one you like. Me personally, I am all for the original. This is kind of like a new Coke situation where really, why would you mess with something that was perfect already? I don't know, and I say it's not even drink soda. But anyways, this is what I think of when I think of the new Toucan Sam. It's like new Coke, and they're going to regret it, because the original one, he's so cute, and yet he's still kind of on the realistic side as far as like realistic colorations. I mean, the blue, maybe not, but I don't know. Do you guys, is everybody else on the same page as me that it was just a mistake to switch up the logo? I think so. As soon as I showed the new Toucan Sam to my husband, and he almost had a heart attack because he was so horrified that they changed it. Well, we're going to go through and add all the details to Mr. Toucan Sam. You can add some highlights. You can actually go really detailed with him. There's so many opportunities on him to add, because like if you go way back to the original Toucan Sam, he doesn't have the different layers and the depth that, say, the Toucan Sam from 5 years ago or 3 years ago does. So there's different kind of eras of Toucan Sam that you can play around with and switch up which one that you're wanting to do. Add a highlight on his beak to make him look really nice and shiny and glossy. Like I said, touch up the brightness on his eye and on his chest with that white as well. Add his pupil, and then the fun thing, or I say the fun thing, although I call all of this stuff fun, so I don't know why you would take this as being more fun as anything else, but we're going to be painting the Froot Loops logo. I have always really enjoyed painting logos, to the point when I was able to actually go to a restaurant, I would always draw the logos of the restaurants on napkins, and it was kind of like my little souvenir. If I were to go out to eat somewhere nice or something, I'd have a little doodle, I said that strange, a doodle of the restaurant's logo to take with me from their napkins. And so then I'm going to do the logos on here. I consider that to actually be the best practice for my art, is, replicating a logo from anywhere you go. But we're going to start out the Froot Loops, and I'm going to begin with actually the little Froot Loops, and the easiest way to do this is to paint a circle of the color and then take white and kind of gently swirl it in. It's not going to give you smooth highlights, but you're not looking for smooth highlights. You're looking for rough kind of highlighted shapes, and that gives you such a quick, easy Froot Loop that looks super great, and it's actually incredibly easy too. So just a little bit of paint swirling and you're good to go. But that only really helps you for the O's. So you have to add the F, the R, and the T of fruit, and the L, the P, and the S of loops. So I've got those first letters, and I'm doing those with kind of a blocky black shape. That'll give you the opportunity to highlight them later. So I'm going to then add the loops part of it. And so I've got the S is all that's left. And S's are always the hardest part to paint in these little scenarios, because they always seem to get too big, at least for me, and that takes a ton of practice. But if you do have an issue where a letter goes awry and you're like, oh man, it's got to go, if you're using acrylic paint like this, all you have to do is buff it. So have a buffer block next to you and buff that area, and the paint will buff right off. Wait till it dries though, but then you can just buff it off. If you're using gel paint and you have not cured it yet, then you can just wipe it off with a little bit of nail cleanser or isopropyl alcohol. Or if you're using gel paint and you have cured it already, then you're probably going to need to get out a file. A buffer could do it, but it would just take a lot of effort on your part, so I would use just a hand file and file that area. It's a great way to just fix your oopsies. And now I'm going to take some gel sealer and apply that over the background, make sure it's nice and shiny, some matte top coat over Mr. Toucan Sam, and that is it. I think that wing sticking out is super trippy, especially in the video. I think it just looks crazy. And so yeah, I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and don't forget to share recreations with me on Facebook or Instagram. I'd love to see them, and I will see you next time. Bye!